All right, so this is not, I'm not warmed up. I haven't done any training. I just took the pre-workout and collagen. And by the way, that collagen, this is the first time I've taken it, mixed really well. And that says a lot for quality of product. So it mixed really well, and I mixed the pre-workout and collagen together. So I just took them in one, like, I guess 10-ounce glass of water or something like that. But I'm not gonna squeeze this as hard as I freaking can. This is more of like testing rate of perceived effort as well. So I will squeeze pretty hard, but I wanna get casually better and better, especially before I'm warmed up, because then I'm gonna warm up and then retest my grip. That way I can squeeze a lot harder and a lot safer. I also have some captains to crush. I'll probably get into that at another time as a staple standard, just to see. I have all the way up to the level 3, because one of my goals, I think it'd be cool if this does work out really well, to be able to close the captains to crush number 3 and number 4. The number 4 is just like, there's only like a couple people in the entire world who can close that. But who knows, this could be really cool training. My hands, I'm telling you, from day one, they're still sore. The tendons are still sore to the touch. They still function fine. Closed hand crimping and crimping like with a half crimp, that still hurts, but not to anywhere near the extent of the first day of training. So a couple days rest in between these sessions I think is working pretty well. My tendons are still sore, so I'm still gonna try to look after them on here. But this is the first test of grip strength. And you gotta remember that my left hand is permanently much weaker than my right. Ever since I broke my wrist, and one of the reasons I'm on this journey is because my left hand had the tendon in my palm cut from when I broke it, and they had to do like an emergency second surgery, but that permanently reduced the mechanical advantage and grip strength in my left hand. So I am going to do my best. I mean, if I can get this hand up to 300 pounds, this one should be up to 400 pounds. But I mean, I think the world record strongest grip on this is like 350 pounds, and that dude's a monster. So we'll see where I'm at, and we'll just test it out. So, okay, that was a quick grip. That was 151. So not squeezing like overly hard, but 151 is a good baseline. I would say that was, you know, a decent squeeze. Let's see on my left. Yeah, 130. So still decent. And again, I wasn't like pushing myself to max here, but those are 2 good baseline numbers before I'm warmed up. I'll warm up and then I'll retest again. The other thing is this thing has a screw on it. This is just a kind of a reminder for myself as well. So this thing has a screw on it, which raises and lowers this portion here so it gets wider or thinner. And so what I'm doing is I'm setting this up on the dash right here. These are little markers. And so the second dash down is where it feels best for me. So that's where I'm going to keep it at for this consistent test. I let a bunch of people at the climbing gym try this all the time, and they're always screwing this up and down to fit their hand size. So I will try to keep remembering to make sure that's my baseline test. But 150, 130 before I'm warmed up. Now I'm going to get into the lifting phase. All right, so this is gonna be a little shaky, but I wanted to show you the styles of grip that I have on this. The first one I have, which is the most neutral and applies to really like hand close strength and closing the captains to crush. This is a rotating handle, and I have one on each side. This is a spacer landmine setup, that green thing that allows me to set up carabiners and stuff on each side. I have my homemade extensors that I'll show you how that works in a little bit, and but this thing is pretty cool. I also have the eagle loops I was telling you about. This is the reason I say they're ergonomic, is you see how they're arched like that. It's just because your fingers are usually different lengths, and your pinky is obviously shorter than the rest of your hands. This just allows you to crimp and put an equal amount, or roughly an equal amount of pressure on throughout all of your finger tendons. So it's just really nice. And I also have the mono. I mean, I can use that for monos as well, the eagle loops, but I mean, I just threw this on here because it doesn't take up much room and it doesn't really take away from anything. So I might use those as well. Also, because this is tendon strength training, I'm going to be training probably on the back end of my training, the extensors. And this isn't really for muscle development. This is more of strengthening just the opening of my hand, so I get a full 360 of training on my finger tendons. Also, the mod I was telling you about in the first video I was going to make, this is a spongy, think of it like a bike handle that's underneath this silicone rubber. You can see the thickness change. So I wrap this with silicone rubber so it keeps the friction and it keeps those handles in place, but there is a spongy, soft surface underneath this bar now, and that's mostly because the extensors hurt really bad when I put my hands and palms on here, but it's just a friendlier way to train, and I want to keep everything as painless as possible. But this is going to be the setup I use, and it's pretty simple. I mean, really simple. The other thing is, you can think about this as those grip strength training things where it's like you have a plate down here and you're pulling it straight up vertically. Now, I would say that this is different because the landmine setup, when I am pulling up to the top, I am pulling this way, so almost diagonally. But what happens with the weight is it's on a lever. So this is pushing into the wall with that tennis ball back here. So that tennis ball is pushing into the wall and the weight is lifting at the same time. So as I pull this up, it's almost arcing like that. And so the reason it's so stressful plyometrically is because as that weight recoils down, it is now extending my fingers in an arc pattern because that weight kind of travels like this. And so the higher you pull the weight, the harder it is on your fingers. So it's not necessarily the same weight the entire time. It's changing as you pull because I'm also pulling into the wall to lever that weight upwards. And so it's a really cool feeling in the fingers. And yeah, so this is the setup. I just wanted to describe what it was. And those are all the grips I'm going to be using. All right, so since this is a forearm day, I'm going to roll my sleeves up. That way we get a nice forearm grip strength, see if the muscles are engaging. I like looking at my muscles, especially extensors, because when you do rapid fire extensor stuff, you can really feel the muscles activating on top. I have one more thing I'm going to show you. Let me go grab it real quick. I'm going to call this thing, I don't know what they call it on Amazon, but I just got it. I'm going to call it a barbell condom because that's what it looks like, right? This just fits on the end of your barbell. So I don't know if you've ever done wrist curls. This is one of my favorite things to do for forearm flexors and strength. And I do a little bit of like lower bicep activation as well, and you can feel it in this tendon. But if you've ever held onto the bottom of a barbell, it kind of hurts. So I just bought this thing. I don't know how much it was. It was like 20 bucks or something like that on Amazon. It has a little bit of spin to it. So that's kind of, I guess that's not too bad because if I put pressure on it, it kind of grips onto it. And I'll just be doing forearm curls with that. But this just adds a little bit of a comfort level to the training as well. So I'll use this in a little bit, but I just wanted to tell you what I was using first. All right, so I haven't really developed a protocol for this yet, but my brain works as though I want to do the easiest stuff first, and especially when warming up. So I'm going to use the bar grips in the beginning. Grab onto these. And as you can see, I have to lever this weight up to get it into place, and then I'll put my thumbs around it as well. And for these, I actually have to stand up just because it feels weird if I sit down. So once I get into rhythm, I'm really just going to start throwing my hands forward. And you can feel this all the way in your finger tendons, all the way down. And this is one of the weirdest exercises ever. I think plyometrics, when you jump on boxes and stuff, looks a lot cooler. But we're doing this for grip strength, and we're exploring how much it helps with hand health and strength training. Okay, so just want to flare them up a little bit, especially the tendons in my palm here. I just want to flare those up, and I'm trying to just get blood flow and circulation and warm up my hands, especially because it's pretty cold in this garage. Again, this is all weird looking, but it feels pretty amazing. The way I built this thing, I specifically built it so it would move. So there's no support structure like an angle bracket or something that would stop this from moving back and forth, because I want that thing to have a little bit of give to it so it slings that weight when I'm using it, and that's what creates more and more recoil. And I probably will have to, like over the coming months, it might fall apart just because screws aren't necessarily meant to do this. They're supposed to hold things into place, but I wanted it to move, and that's the reason this is kind of wonky as well. And if you're wondering about the duct tape on the side, this thing, when I started using it, because it moved, it would squeak horridly. Like the squeak was just unbearable, and I hate when things squeak. So I tried, I don't know if it works with wood, but I tried spraying WD-40 on the wood to see if it would stop the squeak, and it made it worse. So I took some pieces of duct tape and I like flossed them in between the pieces of wood. And I think combined with the WD-40, it stopped the squeak. So as you hear, like it's just a little bit of creakiness, but this was like violently squeaking in my ears when I was doing it. Anyway, I was saying that during my rest time. I'm gonna go back to the bars one more time, and then I'm going to use the eagle loops afterwards. So easiest first. I have 25 and 15, what is that, 40 pounds on the bar. I'm trying my best to keep the weights the same and consistent, like for warm-ups, and that way I get some data results, and it's all going to be variable based on who you are. But yeah, I can feel this all the way in my tendons. And I'm really trying to like open my hand as much as possible. And it takes like 15 and 20 reps until it starts to burn. Then once it starts burning, just do it for a little longer and then drop and rest for a minute too. It's funny too, I've had this little box thing for a while, and I was gonna use a chair, but when I put the chair here, the barbell would hit the chair on the way up. And so I was like, well, I have a piece of wood that is like a seat. So this thing could break at any moment because it's just two pieces of wood with no support and some screws in it. But as long as the force is going down into it, it should be fine. But it was nice that I had this because it works perfectly for this seated position, especially when I'm doing the eagle loops. The next thing I'm gonna do is eagle loop, and then we'll roll into probably some extensors. And then once everything is nice and warm, and I feel pretty good, I'll retest my grip strength. And then I'll get into the actual like physically harder, probably a little bit heavier weight, and really put some stress on my fingers. But this is day 3 of this training, and it's going well so far. I honestly thought I was thoroughly injured from the first time I did this, but over the course of the last 2 days, my tendons are feeling much better. Again, they're still a little tender, but I've been through that before in rock climbing, and usually I would just climb softly and get through that, and then it would eventually go away. But I always thought, like, you know, what if that soreness was kind of how a muscle works? And from the research I was doing, it's not the same as muscle development. It's because the tendons are actually like shearing and pulling away from the bones and stuff. But it's that repair process that I'm looking for. So I'm looking to break down the tendons, and there's so many different, like you can Google, just for example, you can Google, does caffeine help boost metabolism? And then you'll find the first Google search is, yes, caffeine will help boost metabolism. And then if you Google, does caffeine slow down metabolism? The first result will be, yes, caffeine slows down metabolism. So you have to be really nitpicky and like look up studies and stuff that are like peer evaluated, meta-analysis and all this stuff. And there's very few of those that are credible enough. And they all kind of have different studies that are done, and none of them are on hands for the most part, unless it's like for arthritis. And yeah, so that's the reason I wanted to do this experiment, because there wasn't a whole lot of info on it. And I I really want to see if this yields some good results, but we'll get some results nonetheless. My hands will either degenerate into dust and I'll never be able to open my hands again or climb hard again, or I'm hoping, fingers crossed, knock on wood, that it has some positive results. And but yeah, that's the basis behind this. I mean, my left hand's pretty screwed either way, so if I can get that as strong as possible by any means necessary, that's what I'm going to do. So now, moving on to the eagle loops. For the first set, I'm going to use the middle of my joint, so underneath one pad. That way I can work the claw motion rather than just stressing my A2 pulleys even more, and just violently stress and rebound those tendons and try to adjust my fingers as I'm doing it. Sometimes I like holding here just for a couple more seconds isometrically right at the end. It's really interesting though, because at first you feel it just in your tendons, like just in the tendons of your fingers. You just feel that like violent tug, like somebody's tugging on your hands really hard. But then as you progress, you really feel it throughout your entire forearm. Like your muscles start being like, oh, you want me to activate? So it feels really good if you like doing forearm workouts, which I do, to like activate those forearm muscles to help support your tendons. And that could be because of an energy loss, because like your tendons are rigid enough to take on the weight. But then as your tendons get fatigued, or maybe it's because your muscles get fatigued, because your muscles are the things moving your tendons, you start to lose a little more energy every time you pull, because something's getting fatigued, and then more and more muscles, you can feel like a creep. Like it starts here and it slowly goes back all the way up on the bottom and on the top of my forearm. So flexors and extensors as I'm pulling that weight up and down. One more set of that, and then I'll go into some extensors, maybe one more set of the bar, and then I'll retest my grip, and then I'll get into the workout. So I just did another set of the eagle loops, but I'm going to move into the extensors. And I wanted to show you, remember this is still all part of the warm-up, I just wanted to show you how the extensors work. So I'll put my hand through this sling. So this webbing rests on my knuckles, and that allows me to pull a little bit with my fingers, but really focus on my extensors in my forearm, because they're hard to activate, and I have to lower the weight a lot because they're so much weaker than my flexors. But as you can see, I could pretty much open my hand and still grab onto the weight, or grab onto these little piece of wood. But it feels good to have my hands in this position, to have a little bit of resistance on my fingers, as well as pull my extensors back. So same sort of thing. I'll rep out. Oh my gosh, this is already burning so bad. I'll just rep out as many as I can. You feel that so bad in your extensors, but also so good. I don't know if you ever worked out your extensors before. They're an annoying muscle group to work out, but if you can target them, which is why I had to build that piece of equipment, because sometimes when you work out your extensors, you're holding onto something with your fingers, and that puts your hand in a really awkward position, as well as relies on this to activate. And sometimes when we're squeezing really hard, it's hard to get the muscles to work all the way through their range of motion. So this allows me to still hold this position while engaging slightly and pull back with my knuckles. So I'm pulling against that the whole way through, and that really, really targets the extensors. So cool little design for extensor work. But I'm gonna do one more set of the bar, so those neutral grip bar position. Let my forearms de-pump because I'm getting pumped already, especially in my extensors, good Lord. And then after I test my grip strength, I'm going to go into like the heavy and more violent version of this. So I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little bit pumped still. That warm up, I kind of got a little flash pumped, which is just a term for just getting too much blood flow and activation in your forearms too fast. So I don't know how this is gonna go, but we're gonna stay consistent with it. So I rested for like 5 minutes between the last set of that. So this is going to be warm up dyno test, full try hard. So here we go. Set it to 0. Sometimes when you're just waiting it a little bit, it'll flash some numbers, but that's okay because it always takes your highest number no matter what. So here we go. All right, so a little bit better than last time, 169. My best I've ever done was 202, and I was just feeling froggy after a workout or a climbing session. And so 169, not great, but again, I can write that off as I'm still a little bit pumped. But it does not hurt to squeeze this thing. Let's test the left out. Oh man, I felt, yeah, I felt way weaker on the left. So 126, interesting. I'm gonna try it a couple times on each hand just to see if there's any, you know, it could be hand placement on this. It could be just a good attempt versus a bad attempt. So I'll try it a couple times and share the results. So right hand number 2. 161, so that's worse. And then left hand. Yeah, I feel like I'm just not squeezing, but see, I felt like I didn't squeeze that hard. This is 140 on the left. So that was 10 pounds better than my last attempt. And then I'll try it a third time. So here we go. Maybe I'll try flipping it around, see if there's a better result or something like that. I don't know. And then we got 175. So we'll take the average of those 3. And I don't know. Let me do the left one more time. The average of those 3. And I think it has something to do with grip position and stuff like that. But I'll learn that as I go. But we're just taking an average here. Yeah, a little bit higher on the left, 142. So again, I'll take the averages of those 3 and I'll put them all together and we'll just say that's the baseline for post warm up. I'll do it 3 times. Actually, no, I won't do it 3 times before because this is gonna be like the strength test that stays relatively consistent. So this will be the 3 test. The initial RPE test will stay relatively the same. So I'll figure out the averages and I'll throw it in. I'm gonna do the right one more time just for giggles. Yeah, 171. So now I'm learning the good attempts. Okay, so good starting point. Again, tendons are still inflamed, so that could be like a little bit of me hesitating to really go full force. Could be how I'm feeling today. A lot of variables involved. We'll try to stay as consistent as possible. Now I'm gonna get into the workout. So the first thing I wanna do is violent plyometric on the big bar. So really just take these and be really violent on the pull and release. So get into the rhythm of it and just almost make that weight fall and spring into my tendons. felt that a lot in my tendons there. So the objective is to basically punch those tendons at wherever I decide to release. And I'm trying to release at the maximum length that I can. I don't want those bars to slip out of my hands, so I'm being conservative with how much I actually open my hand. But I can feel that in these lower tendons here, and also it could be from the pressure of the bar, but also in my A2 pulleys. But it feels pretty decent. I don't really know a rest scheme or rest amount. I should probably start recording those. Right now I'm in the FITFO phase, if you know the military term. It's the figure it, the F out phase. So I'm just trial and erroring what feels good, what pumps me out. Again, I'm not even counting reps. I'm just going to like where it's 90% fatigue, or just figuring out like how it feels on my tendons. Just getting a sense of awareness for this style of training because I've never done it before. So I'm going to do this for probably a few weeks and then get into the recording weight habit. So I'm going to use the eagle loops now in the friendly position, which is in that first seam, and do the same sort of thing. It's kind of interesting. Eagle loops, even though they're ergonomic, can feel it coming out of my pinky. So maybe if I rotate these, my pinky starts to slide off, and I don't want that. If I rotate them, maybe it'll hold my pinky on better. Yeah, it feels better. I don't know if you could see, but I actually drooled while I was doing that because of how focused I was on my tendons. I can feel that so much in my ring finger A2 pulley. So I know that was one of the ones that was hurting prior to doing this. And I can also feel it in my pointer finger. I think that's your index finger, right? It's a scientific way of saying that. Pointer finger, that's what you do to point at stuff. I can feel it there. And that seems to, I think that's residual from the prior tenderness from the previous training. And since I'm using my whole hand at the same time, those are going to be like the weaker links. But what I'm trying to do is focus on even pressure throughout both my hands. And that felt pretty good. So we'll see how the next few sets feel. And I'm going to keep doing these, alternating between the bar and the eagle loops. I'll probably use the eagle loops a little more since they apply to climbing a lot more. But I'm probably going to add a little bit of weight and keep the violence the same. So yeah, I'm going to do that now. All right, so I added 25 pounds. I'm going to use the bar. That way my body gets used to the weight at with an easier grip, and start the plyometrics. I'm going to be a little more conservative on the violence, but as I get in the rhythm of things, I just noticed these carabiners are kind of annoying. They sometimes flip over and don't work like they're supposed to. They just get caught. That one's actually bent really bad. Hopefully it doesn't snap. But now it's more even. And this allows me to adjust my hands and my just brain to the weight before I put it on a harder to use hold. So obviously, dang, I can feel it all the way through my knuckles. Ooh. Hopefully that collagen I took earlier is needling its way into my tendons. Yeah, it's funny, after you put the weight down, I think it's because we're locked in that position. After you put the weight down, it's like, oh shit, what have I done to my hands? And then you move your fingers around for a second and you're like, oh, okay, they're back to normal. So rest for a little bit, and then eagle loops are up next. I'm gonna do extensors last, and probably, no, I'm gonna do extensors last, and then on this, and then I'll use the barbell condom to do my flexor exercises. But trying to keep track of how much the weight, I'll try to record the weight. I can always look back at these videos and see what I lifted if I really want to. Right now I have 65 pounds on the landmine setup. So I added another 25-pound plate. I think I already said that, but 65 pounds. It'd be kind of interesting later on if this is worth digging into, if it's actually working. It'd be kind of interesting to see what actual force, how much force is actually being put onto my tendons. Because it's not 65 pounds. It's like, it's gotta be like at least 3 times that, because of how much I'm catching the weight on my fingers. But that's the idea, to increase load capacity of the tendons and overall closing power, because this is also connecting to the muscles in my forearms and allowing me to squeeze more rapidly and kind of have that rebound effect. So a little more conservative, but I'm going to use the eagle loops and see how it feels. Got to remember that this is the way to put this on here, because if I do it the other way, my pinkies slip out. Oh yeah, I can feel it right in the tendons that are already hurting. So we'll be a little more conservative with that. Okay. Good Lord. That is, I feel like I have arthritis in my fingers. Oh, that could be what's happening. But, ooh, yeah, that's stressing this A2 pulley and this A2 pulley, the ones that were already tender. It's like, those eagle loops are so violent on those. But again, right when you take your hands off, I feel like I'm 90 years old, and then it like goes back to, oh, my hands feel okay. So I'm trying my best not to pop a pulley. So I don't think I'm gonna go heavier than this. I might just every couple of weeks increase the weight. So right now I'll stay at 65 pounds, unless I'm feeling like super good and super saucy in the coming weeks. And I feel like I can go up, but I'm gonna feel it out for now, especially because I'm not counting. I'm just going until fatigue, rate of perceived effort. So RPE of what I believe is about 90% of what I can do. And then just soaking in that rebound effect of the plyometrics. So I'm gonna do a couple more sets of both these bar versus eagle loops, and then I will switch over to the extensors, and I'll see you in that part. So I wasn't recording at the time, but what I was just talking about just happened. I went too far forward, the bar rolled out of my hand, and just snapped to the ground. It actually wasn't as bad as I thought, but I just wanted to say that what I was just talking about just happened. Okay, so just finished my last set. I did a bunch more, probably like 8 to 10 more sets of this. And then towards the end, my tendons couldn't even handle the weight, especially at this flexed angle. So I had to stand up and like kind of micro movement, so micro plyometrics, rather than the like full on out ones. Plus I reduced the weight, but the tendons are feeling used and abused for sure. So is the forearm and the muscles surrounding my forearm. But overall, the tendons feel good. Tendons always kind of feel pretty good during the session, and then the next day they're just tore up. So this was the most intense session that I've done so far. And we'll see how long I need to rest after this. I'm gonna do extension now. And for extension, especially now that I'm pretty fatigued, I have to reduce the weight to just the bar. And you'll see how fast my extensors get worn out. After the extension, I'm gonna do some forearm curls with the barbell condom, and then that'll be it for today. But nothing popped. I mean, I thought something popped for a second there, especially on that last set. My middle finger, I think it was just extending all the way. And I was like, that's where I need to draw the line, because this is going decent so far. My hands are feeling crazy used and abused. Like, it's hard to describe, but I mean, it's too early to see if this is actually doing anything positive for my body. Plus, I'll have to check in back when I'm 90, and I'll be like, hey kids, I can't even open my hand anymore. So this is just an ongoing thing. But for the next 6 to 8 months, this will be a really cool experiment. I'll show you the forearm extension now. So I think I already did this once, but just to show you again and kind of describe what the workout's gonna be, it's probably gonna be like 3 to 4 sets till exhaustion, not counting the reps. I've noticed that I'm going so fast in the plyometrics that I can't really count the reps, so I'm counting kind of time-wise in my head. So I'll go up to like 60 seconds or something like that. And it'll probably change as I continue this. But now I'm not doing plyometrics with my forearms. I'm doing just muscle building. And this right here is one of the greatest forearm extensor exercises I've ever come across. And it's just something I built. So, because they don't make these extensors, extension tools. And it's kind of like, it gets so taxing that I can't even engage my forearms that much anymore. So I have to like force a semi-full contraction because my forearms are so fatigued. But the nice part about the strap is I can kind of relax into it, and then it's almost eccentrically overloading my extensors. It hurts so bad because right now that weight's pulling against my extensors, and I'm trying not to let my wrist come down. And so it goes from a concentric focus exercise into a eccentric overload till exhaustion exercise as well. So I'm concentrically going like this, and then once I get so fatigued, I'll just hold my wrists up, and that weight's pulling me back down, and I'm resisting against that eccentric overload, and it's a really good burn in the upper forearms. 3 to 4 sets of this, and then I'll show you the last exercise, which is the forearm flexors. All right, so I have 15 pounds on here. My forearms are already exhausted from the rest of this workout. But for the last exercise, I'm just gonna be using the condom and just curling that weight up. I might need to take the knob behind. Oh, so 10 on each arm. I'm going to take that thing off because it's kind of annoying that it flaps around while I'm using it. But 10 on each arm, really focusing the forearm flexors here, and a little bit of the lower bicep tendon as well down here. That way I'm just getting that slight bit elbow lift off. Tendons are destroyed, but they're feeling thick and like inflamed. And I kind of think that's what I'm looking for. But this is a good little finisher because it allows me to use like a cupping whole hand and just focus on my forearm flexors. But the damage from the tendon and stuff, that was already good. And that's kind of the meat of this workout. But interesting so far. I mean, this is only day 2 of training. And I'm going to call it day 1, day 2, that sort of stuff. And I'll try to figure out how to name it. But this is day 2 of the actual training. And we'll call it day 3 because I'm going to be going over the recovery process and that sort of stuff. So this is day 2 of training. Day 3, I did it on Thursday. Yeah, so this is day 3. I took 1 day of rest because I didn't do that heavy of a workout the first time I did it. This one, we'll see how much recovery time I need from it. I've only taken 1 day of rest. I think I'm going to need like 2 to 3 possibly for my tendons to be back to normal. But the nice part is my hands and grip are so fatigued that it forces me to take rest days on grip strength because I usually feel like I can push through and kind of cap my grip strength training with rock climbing, that sort of stuff. And so hopefully I'm able to do this like possibly if I do 2 to 3 days a week, I'm going to have to figure out what days to throw climbing in there once my tendons are back up to where they need to be in order to weight and project properly. So I might do like 1 time in a week and then climb once or twice and then come back to this. But this is really the experiment here. So I'll just go through and label accordingly and talk to you about my rest times and stuff. But thanks for joining me on this weird experiment journey, and we'll see where it goes.